Early Windows 11 25H2 benchmarks confirm that the highly anticipated update provides no performance improvements over Windows 11 24H2, and while Microsoft fans hope for a speed boost, the reality is quite underwhelming. Because Phoronix has already tested Windows 11 25H2 against Canonical's upcoming Ubuntu 25.10, Ubuntu 24.0.3 LTS, and Windows 11 24H2 in a head-to-head benchmarking battle to see if the new version delivers any improvements. And sadly, the results show otherwise, as testing revealed that 25H2 was unable to outperform 24H2, even technically losing to its predecessor in many tests, with the benchmarks carried out on a Ryzen 9 9950X paired with 32 gigabytes of DDR5 memory and covering a wide variety of applications, including LuxCorrender, Embry, Intel OpenImage Denoise, Osprey, and Indigo Bench. But if you're familiar with previous Phoronix Windows versus Linux testing, then you will not be surprised that Ubuntu once again came out on top, because across Phoronix's 41 benchmark geomean, both versions of Ubuntu managed to outperform Windows 11 25H2 by around 15%, a massive gap that highlights Linux's efficiency. But the bigger concern for Windows users is that looking exclusively at the Windows operating systems, 25H2 provided precisely 0% more performance compared to 24H2 across the entire benchmarking suite on average, and that makes this one of the most underwhelming major updates in recent memory, with individual benchmark numbers further elaborating on this disappointing performance behavior, because in many of the 41 benchmarks, 25H2 and 24H2 were competing for third and fourth place, with 24H2 often trading blows with 25H2. For example, in LuxCorrender, Windows 11 24H2 was 2% more performant than 25H2, while in ASDC Encoder 5.0, 25H2 managed to be about 2% faster than 24H2, but overall the differences are negligible, leaving users with no meaningful performance benefit, and this should not come as a surprise since Microsoft's upcoming version of Windows 11 is based on the same servicing branch as 24H2, meaning both versions are largely identical under the hood. In fact, Windows 11 24H2 already contains many of 25H2's new features in a disabled state, and 25H2 merely flips the switch to turn these features on and guarantee their availability, while 24H2 users will see them gradually enabled over time through updates, which is very different from the transition from 23H2 to 24H2, where 24H2 was a massive overhaul that included a large part of the operating system being rewritten in Rust for stability and security improvements. So as a result, Windows 11 25H2 is one of the smallest so-called major updates Microsoft has created for Windows 11, and it includes just a handful of new features while even removing some older components. For example, PowerShell 2.0 and the Windows Management Instrumentation command line are being stripped away, and the update itself is being delivered as an enablement package requiring just one restart to upgrade from 24H2 to 25H2, working essentially like a standard cumulative update rather than a transformative system upgrade, which makes sense from Microsoft's servicing model perspective, but is disappointing for power users who are expecting something bigger. And this entire situation highlights a growing trend where Linux distributions like Ubuntu are consistently outperforming Windows in benchmarks, especially on high-end hardware like the Ryzen 9 9950X, showing that Linux has matured not only as a developer and server platform, but also as a performance powerhouse in certain workloads. And while Microsoft continues to focus on incremental updates, Linux seems to be gaining more traction in technical communities. But for everyday users, a takeaway is clear. Upgrading from Windows 11 24H2 to 25H2 will not give you any performance boost at all. So unless you specifically want the minor feature changes or security adjustments, you should not expect your system to suddenly feel faster or more powerful after installing 25H2, which begs the question of how Microsoft plans to keep Windows exciting in the face of the stagnation. Because as of now, it seems like Linux is steadily pulling ahead in terms of raw efficiency, leaving Windows users with only convenience and ecosystem lock-in as the primary reasons to stay. But as always, time will tell whether Microsoft has bigger surprises planned for future builds. And until then, this is the reality of 25H2, no performance boost, minor changes, and lots of questions. And with that, you've been watching TechVerse.